Hello, everybody. This is Sheila Kumar Hay of Ecstatic Birth. I'm so happy to be back to doing these conversations to transform birth this week. And I'm especially excited because the woman that I have here with me is a former client, student. We started when she was pregnant and we started working together one-on-one. And then she was feeling really called to birth work and joined the Ecstatic Birth Practitioner Training, which she just completed, and has launched her own business called the Birthing Shaman. And so much of what she is bringing to the world was informed by her journey. So I am very excited to introduce you all to Heather Levine, founder of the Birthing Shaman. Hi, Heather.
Hi, Sheila. Hi, everyone. Great to be here. Thank you.
So happy you're here. And I want to start right at the very beginning with your pregnancy and birth. One of the things that you said to me, after the fact was, Sheila, I was pregnant at the same time as a whole bunch of my friends. I don't know, 10 friends. And I was the only one that had the birth that I desired. And so I was wondering if you could share a little bit about how do you process that? Why were you the only one that had the birth that you desired? And what were the things that you put into your conception journey, your pregnancy, and birth prep?
Oh, yeah. Thanks for asking. So it was quite a journey. My husband and I were on the pregnancy journey for a few years. We had 2 pregnancies prior to conceiving our first child, son. And through that whole process, it was a 3-year journey. We learned so much. We started off very much in the system, if you will. We were living in the Bay Area. And through that time, we said, we took off on a journey actually to go travel. And we were with different cultures, different practices all around the world, just learning from them and how pregnant women show up in these cultures. And along our journey, we really started to dip into the deep spirituality behind birth, as opposed to birth as a medical process and something that needs to be dealt with, which is just what the system kind of says it as. So through that, it was all very, it was beautiful. It was, we had very conscious conception, very conscious through the pregnancy. And really when it came time to look at the birth experience that we wanted, we communicated between ourselves and then also communicated with our spirit baby to see what was in that ideal form. And what we came with was, and we all really decided, was we wanted to have a home birth and a water birth ideally. So we set that experience up. We were living on the island of Kauai at the time, and it was magical. So the day I went into labor, that began late in the morning. It was actually on the spring equinox, full moon, super moon. So our son really chose a time to come in. And it was a long journey. The journey was a 36-hour journey. And I'd done enough work to recognize that birthing is one of the most peak spiritual experiences a woman can have in her whole entire lifetime, if she's kind of left to her own devices, right? So we set the space up just like that. We built our birthing sanctuary in our room. We had the water tub. We hand selected our birthing team and made sure everybody present had a role, and we were all very aware of what we were there to do. So, through our work together, you helped me bring a lot of these practices into the space. Things like really learning and being with my body at all times. It's easy to go out of body quite a bit, especially during birth, but always remembering to bring it back down. And I brought my husband into those practices as well. We learned how to work with my body through the breath, through the movement, and then also through communication, talking with our son who was making the transition from one dimension into this one. So it was a challenging journey and we did it. It was I think a lot of the work that we did, it was all, I really believe all the prep work that we did, even in the 3-year span leading up to it, most specifically when I was pregnant, allowed us to literally create the ideal experience that we wanted, because we stepped back from what everybody told us this is how birth should look. We said, wait a minute, what kind of birth do we want to create for ourselves and our future child?
So beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I hear so much consciousness. I hear so much like a reverence, right? There's like an aspect of the sacred that you brought in. And, you know, one of the things that I see a lot in this work, especially when a woman has like this beautiful experience, and maybe other women didn't have that experience, right? Like you had all these friends that didn't have that experience. And, you know, there tends to be this like tendency to just like write it off. Like, oh, you just got lucky, Heather, right? Did you experience any of that between your friends, and like, how did you navigate that?
Yeah, you know, the friends, no one, there was never a you got lucky. Everybody, I think we all had enough awareness to know that you always have the birth that you need, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was made to happen. So whatever that looks like, it was just, that's what was meant to happen. For us, you know, I even find myself, even like to date, wanting to even keep that even to myself for feelings of like, oh, I feel bad. And then I recognize like, hang on, you know, like I think had I known even a few years ago what was actually possible in the birth experience, it just would have shifted everything for me. So I think for other women who have these like incredible birth experiences, being able just to talk about it and then, you know, and share their experience, because that in turn, you know, activates like mirror neurons and saying like, oh yes, and someone else saying that's possible. And then for those that have, you know, a different experience, it's always, you know, I really believe it's important to process on both sides, all of the births, because they're all just complete miracles and just extraordinary experiences. So
Yeah. I also, the thing that comes to mind when you're speaking is, you know, I love how you said, like, we have the birth that we're meant to have,
yeah.
right? Before you go into a birth, you don't know what that is, right? So like, even though you created all of these conditions, and you were like, I remember you were such a yes, like you were someone who was willing to prepare, and you prepared like mind, body, soul in all these ways with me and in other ways. And so you did all of this, but there's always still that element of like, what if, right? Because we know that it doesn't, you're not guaranteed anything in birth, right? Like you're going to get what you're going to get. And so how did you navigate that ahead of your birth, right? Because you might not have had this birth. And I also am hearing you say that it was challenging, right? There's this like misconception sometimes, oh, ecstatic birth, oh, is it just like easy? Like you just like squat and orgasm? And of course not. Like, we're not saying it's easy. We're saying it can be like empowering and transformative. And so I'm curious, for you working so hard to have this experience, which you had even with the challenge, which I think is part of it. How did you navigate? Like, what if I got a C-section, or what if I had to transfer, or what if I didn't have the experience that I so deeply desire?
Yeah, there were pieces of that. So ahead of time, I've been doing a lot of inner work for many years, and it really kicked into gear during pregnancy. And it was almost as if our son was asking us to really look at ourselves, and particularly our fears. That's something that you and I actually had worked on, that especially around, I had a huge fear of having a C-section. And you said to me, you know, where do you think this fear is coming from? So did that deeper work, and I started really getting into it. And what I found was I was afraid to die, because that's a real fear in childbirth. And that I think a lot of women, perhaps unconsciously, we all carry it, because that's also a story line that loads from past generations, right? So I went in and I excavated that fear, and it took diligence, and it took patience, and it took time. And I flushed it. And then also I brought my husband into the conversation, because we both recognized anything that we had yet to process from an unconscious level was going to be projected directly into the birth space. So he was my birth partner through the whole thing. So the two of us had to look at, what are we actually afraid of in this birth process? And we came up with a whole host of different things. I mean, my list was long, and the ability to at least verbalize what I was feeling in my heart allowed the transmutation of energy to occur so that something else could arise. Because if that fear stayed in the system, I almost guarantee I would have ended up in the situation that I feared the most or didn't want the most. So yeah, we noted it was important for both of us to have done that work ahead of time. So
important. I'm so glad that you presence that. I think, mom, partner, birth practitioner, like everyone, right? The birthing field is really porous. And, there's a lot of work that's been done around how the vibration of fear disrupts the birthing process. And that could be like your fear as a mom, or your partner's fear, or your birth practitioner's fear. And I find that is really deep work. And a lot of times women aren't willing to look at their fears because they're worried, oh my God, if I give it attention, it's going to come true, right? Like we live in the age of the secret. And so we're not supposed to do that. But I'm so glad that you highlighted this. And for any expectant moms watching this later, please, please, please do this deep work, because I have no doubt that this was an integral piece for Heather to have that experience that she wanted.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Wholeheartedly.
Yeah. And so I would love to talk a little bit now about like how that experience of like calling in your child, conscious conception, preparing for the birth so consciously, led to you feeling called to doing birth work yourself. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. So 5 years ago, I was a tech executive in the Bay Area, and I was loving my job. And I said at one point, like, I believe my soul is here to do different work. So uncertain of what I was going to do, I just quit. And I said, I'm just going to set off on a journey to see what speaks to me. And so I went inward, and I just started looking at myself and seeing what needed to clear, what wanted to come through. And I had been setting the intention, high intention and prayer for whatever wants to, I will clean the channel, and whatever wants to come through will come through. And it took patience. It's been, it was 4 years. And through the pregnancy, I was like, wow, because we were able to step, like I said before, out of the system and back from everything and look at things at a 30,000 foot view, I was able to see that, like, wow, there's a lot of opportunity that I was unaware even existed in this birthing space. And we were living in America, where these things should be plenty, they could be plenty. And I said, okay, birthing. And all of a sudden, so much started to load. And I just started navigating my experience and going back to like what you said earlier, the like full body yes. And I started registering some of this work. I found you. There was orgasmic birth, all these different teachers on different types of birth you can have. I was like, what? And I started calling that in more and more. The sacredness of birth, teachers that will teach them the highly spiritual nature of birth, the shamanic experience of birth. It's like, whoa. And so just opening up to that. And all of a sudden it was, I was working with a teacher one of my teachers in Kauai. Her name is Barbara Esnin. And we had been talking that the birthing process actually starts before birth. It starts preconception, and it's all in the parents' work that they do on their inner selves to prepare the way, to clear the way, energetically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, for the new souls that are coming in. And so we began to write, and what came out of it was this new course that we designed, and it's the intersection of spirituality and science. We're looking at how epigenetic inheritance really affects unconsciously our lineage and what we're passing through to our children. And then we're looking at like cellular memory from our ancestors and how that loads, and it's all in all of our bodies. So all of a sudden, out of like 5 years ago, having zero clue what I was going to do, I really sank into my body, and I said, is this resonant with every cell in my body? Is this work meant to come through? And that was the question too, like really tapping in, like, is this work meant to come through right now and in this form? And it was just, yes, yes. And every time I had a doubt, I'd check back in, and there would always be some type of physical synchronicity that always showed up as just a confidence booster or a reminder that, yes, this is the work. And this is the beginning of the work and in this space. So.
Yeah. Oh, this is so good. I see a lot of women that are really drawn to birth, right? They're really drawn to ecstatic birth, really drawn to birth work that might not already be birth workers. And they might have, like you, like they might be tech executives or have, you know, other jobs and professions. And a lot of time, like that attraction, don't know what to do with it. Like they have so much passion for this work, but they don't know what to do with it. And so, you know, I heard you talking about like clearing the channel and the body. I was wondering if you have anything more specific you would advise someone who feels like so drawn to this work, but maybe is still navigating like, well, what's my role in this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say, well, I can speak from my journey. There was a lot that was loading out here, you know, like, oh, this is so cool. And I was interested in a lot of different fields. And what really shifted was when I went inside again. And, you know, when I speak about clearing the channel, what I actually mean is doing that. For me, it was doing internal, very deep shadow work and seeing where I still had old, very limiting patterns that were still occurring in my life. And this is an ongoing journey. I'll be doing it my whole life, right? But really clearing enough so that I knew the information that I was getting at the time was mine. It was different than perhaps what was loading or what I think that I wanted, right? That was a huge difference. It was like getting out of my head and into the body, and really recognizing that in order for anything, any work, body of work that wants to come through at this time, it is our job to be in our bodies fully. And I am historically somebody that likes to be half in, half out. I'm comfortable like that. And I recognized that I was half in, half out. And so fully embodying, and that's how the work comes through. So we can present it out into earth this time.
So cool. So cool. I love how you describe that. And I love how clear you are that we are birthing through our body, whether it's a baby or a business or your soul's work or a relationship, right? There's this like body piece that I think culturally we have bypassed.
Yeah.
Even in the physical birth experience, there's this body piece of like, oh, let's disconnect, let's numb, let's avoid, right? And so for you in preparing for your birth, there was a lot of that reconnection happening. And also for you, as you were gestating your business, as you were gestating your soul's work and then birthing it, there's a big body piece.
Huge. That was actually the missing connection for me, because I was doing a lot of spirit work, a lot of cosmic work. Yeah. And I was missing that connection piece. And our work together, the ecstatic birth work, brings you in body, and birth in and of itself brings you very much in your body. And that was absolutely it. And that was the missing link for me, because for so long I was figuring out how to connect the information and then bring it forward. And it's simply the practices of fully embodying. And that could be through anything, you know, yogic work, breath work, somatic body work. Somatic body work was huge for me. Practices.
And I'm curious about, because I see a lot of people also very spiritual, the way you described, and maybe doing yoga, but like having that spiritual connection, right? And, or maybe meditating, but having that spiritual connection. And also there's this like bypassing that happens from, like the body, they're bypassing the body and the core of the body, which is like sexuality. So I'm curious about like, that's the integration for you of sexuality through all of this.
Yeah, and that has really come in with like that yes that we talk about, right? It's that does it feel good? And so I guess that's the best way to describe it. Like, does this process feel good? And it takes time. It took time, at least for me, to really hone this skill, because sometimes I would get the yes, but then there would be like a knot in my stomach, or I'd feel a pain in my foot. And we have to remember, that is the body's way of saying there might be a yes, and there's still something that that I needed to work through in that time. So honing in and saying like, okay, little knot in my stomach, what do you have to tell me? And exploring that and being honest. That was also a huge piece, like really being honest with myself. And so the whole body has to be like tingling and vibrating like, yes. I mean, we all know it when we have the yeses. And that you really helped me with this was giving myself permission to follow through on the yes, and allow myself to have that full body yes, and then follow through on it. And if it was a different answer, like something else needs to happen, permission to just follow that line, as opposed to, oh, here's what I think I need to be doing, I'm going to shut this off and follow a different path.
Yeah. And I think that's where the shamanic journey comes in, right? Like when you're talking about like birth as a shamanic journey, it's following those threads, like that deep connection, and really traveling through whatever is coming up, even if seems out of alignment with your headspace, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You never know what's going to come up, and just follow. Yeah. It's the permission, the allowing for the yes, the full body yes. And then that permission to feel everything in your body, and then that follow through. That's huge. Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for sharing all of this and presencing it in your beautiful way. And I would love for you to share a little bit more about your work and this course that you're introducing, and anything else you want to say about the Birthing Shaman.
Oh, great. Yeah. So the Birthing Shaman is a destination, a space that is held for women to come and recognize that they are their own birthing shaman. And what I mean about that is, a shaman is somebody who dances in between the worlds. And as a mother, that is exactly what we do when we give birth. We are physically here in our bodies, and our soul is reaching into the next dimension to welcome and pull our baby through our bodies, which are the portal, and then allow them to come into the earth space. And as a part of the Birthing Shaman, there's going to be videos and just a lot. That's what's been gestating of like topics that nobody really talks about, right? In the birth space. Well, few people do, I should say. Really focusing on birth as a very spiritual journey, and also looking at practical, tactical things like the practice of circumcision these days. Let's talk about that, right? What does that mean? Looking at different medicines in the drugs used in birth. What are they? What does it actually mean for mama baby, right? So really starting to look at some of these more taboo topics and just bring voice to them. And so people can make an informed and an empowered choice, because that's what this is all about. Whatever choice parents make, that is the right choice for them. It's just a matter of having the empowered choice. So as a part of the Birthing Shaman work, there's also coursework too. So as I mentioned before, we just launched there's a new course called Birthing the Next Generation. And that is focused on working with parents and parents-to-be that are wishing to really recreate a new storyline for themselves and their future generations. And we do this by tapping into and unlocking cellular memory from our ancestral lineage, looking at our epigenetic inheritance. Epigenetics is a new science, and epigenetics literally means control above the gene line. The genes, historically speaking, in old medicine, our genes were typically just given to us and that's all we had. But with the new science of epigenetics, we now know we have the ability to control our genes. And this is huge for the birthing. This understanding is huge for the birthing parents, because the way the mother is in her environment during pregnancy directly affects which genes in her child get expressed. That's gigantic, right? Revelations. Yep. So we look at that. And then we really round out and close out the course by tapping into the quantum field. So we can actually create either the ideal conception that we're looking for, or an ideal reality that we wish to create for our family lineage. So it's beautiful and also very important work during this time, because we do get into a lot of the shadow work as well. So we can excavate and clear the space for a new reality to be birthed on the planet at this time, which is what I think we're all desiring.
We're right there.
Yeah, we're there.
We're feeling the collective waves of labor. It's time to birth that new reality, that new generation. Heather, this is such important work, and I am so glad you're on it. I'm so glad you're sharing your medicine with the world in this way. So grateful to you for coming and sharing your journey and sharing your wisdom. Tell everyone, if they want to connect with you, how they can do that. Website, email, and I'll put whatever links you want as well in the show notes.
Thank you. The website is thebirthingshaman.com. And my email is heather@thebirthingshaman.com.
Easy enough, easy enough. Well, thank you so much. And is there anything else that you want to share that we haven't touched on?
I think that rounds it out. I'm very grateful for our work together, Sheila. Just giving you gratitude. What you have brought into this world is possibility that I had zero clue even was possible a few years ago. And the way that you're connecting to the body, to sensuality, to sexuality through the birth experience is profound. Like, how many children will be delivered through that portal of that love and that creation energy, the ecstatic nature of everything that shifts everything, right? So thank you.
Oh my gosh, you just made me so happy, because possibility is what this has been about for me from the very beginning, and having, my ecstatic birth and being like, why didn't I know this was possible? Like, what? Like, I was preparing for pleasure, and still, like, what I experienced was like, why didn't I know this was possible? And why don't women know that that's possible? So I'm so excited that, like, you got that, you presenced that, and now you're running with it in your way. So good. So good.
Thank you.
Yeah, lots of love. Thank you so much for coming here today. Thank you to everybody that's watching. Just really have a great day, everyone.
Thank you. Have a great day.